Hello, you're watching TelecomTV. We're here in London, in the city, in trendy Shoreditch, at the Internet of Insurance conference and event, and I'm talking with Sarb Sembhi, cybersecurity expert with ISACA. And ISACA, as Sarb, you were telling me, is a professional membership association in the areas of risk, governance and security.
That's right. And also I work for a company called the Nord Group, where I'm the Chief Technology Officer.
Thank you. Okay, let's get into the meat of this. As we know, insurance has been around for a long time, and it's a venerable old industry now, and it's, as a result of that, it was a disruptor 3 centuries ago, but certainly not anymore. And it's been reluctant to change for all sorts of reasons, but change is being forced upon it now by technology and changes within the industry itself. And they're beginning to realise, the established companies, they're going to have to do something, or they're going to go to the wall. And one of the things they're doing something about is the massive amount of data that they hold, which in the past they've not really realised the potential of, because it's just been there. But now with new algorithms, with new methods, they can use it to gain value, to add value, to create value. Along with that, though, hand in hand goes with that comes new responsibilities in the field of data sovereignty, compliance, privacy laws, etc. Now, let's talk about your expertise. I've talked for quite long enough. What will the impact be as far as cybersecurity is concerned on the insurance industry?
I think there's a variety of impacts. First of all, I think if you think about it, like you've said, the industry hasn't changed much. It hasn't needed to, but so many other industries have been in the same boat. It's not unique. There have been disruptors in many other industries. There hasn't yet been a disruptor to the traditional insurer. There have been disruptors to the comparison industry in terms of insurers, and several of those, not one or two. What's going to happen, and I'll see in the future happening, is businesses being set up and being real disruptors, those that collect a lot of the data that will enable them to be far more competitive to the traditional insurer, unless the traditional insurer moves that way itself.
Okay, now what does that mean, A, for the upstarts and the ones that are now collecting the data, who have come from a different background? Presumably they've come from IT and they understand the internet, they understand the Internet of Things, they understand telematics and so on, which the insurance companies don't necessarily do. That's one side of the equation. Then you've got the other side. What are the dangers, the obstacles and in that area for both sides of it, and what are the solutions? Okay.
I think the first thing is that I think that the innovators will be similar to the innovators that we've seen in other industries. A bit like the Amazons in the sense that until recently Amazon was one of the world's biggest retailers without owning a physical shop. Yep. And like Uber, it's the biggest taxi company without owning any cars. So the sort of innovators that I believe that we have yet to see are those sorts of innovators, real disruptors to the market. They will come from people who've seen an opportunity, who've managed to develop some technology, and there will be technology companies first, and they just happen to work in the field of insurance. That's the way that they will appear. In terms of the data, yes, a lot will rely on the use of data, the collection of data, how they determine what they can and cannot do. I mean, it's interesting, again, I talk about Amazon. If you look at the sort of things that Amazon was doing when it was first set up, in terms of the reviews it had, we recommend this, so much of what's on the site when you log in on the page, all those things that you see. Isn't it interesting that if you compare what they have and some of the competitors still do not have some of those things that Amazon had on day one?
That is interesting. I've not considered that, you know.
Absolutely, and I think it's how are they aiming to compete if they're not copying what would have been thought of as basic good practice? So even in the insurance industry, you're going to get some disruptors that are going to come along and they're going to throw some things at you that are going to really work for you. In the same way reviews work for Amazon, that are really going to work for you, and some of the other insurers are not going to pick up on these things, and that will be surprising that it's so obvious.
What about in terms of the technology of cybersecurity within the insurance industry and within the internet of insurance. What's being used at present? Is it up to the job? Is it sufficient? Does it need to be different? Is something specialist needed?
Okay, there's two things there. One is cybersecurity within the insurers themselves to protect the data. The other part of it is in the products that they offer as cybersecurity policies. They are connected, obviously, but they're not the same thing. So in terms of protecting themselves, I do know several of the chief information security officers within these companies, and they are moving and they are beginning to think far more differently than the way that they used to think. I've worked for companies in the past where we've written white papers on the difference and the impact that technology is going to have in, for example, the shipping industry. What's the difference between the different types of, I guess, floating objects compared to buildings? So we looked at everything from a small yacht through to a tanker through to a cruise liner. Basically, you know, they can be compared to physical buildings. The only difference is they are floating. And there are so many similarities between them that you'd be amazed. And to protect them, it's almost exactly the same way that you'd protect each. Yet if you look at where the future's going in terms of autonomous tankers or self-shipping or driving whatever tankers, and they are coming about, we don't get that in buildings yet. Buildings aren't likely to just drive away yet. But they are. Apart from that, there are so many similarities in how you protect them. There's a lot of work that's been done in the industry around smart buildings, where the idea is that the building will protect itself, whether it's a office block or it's a stadium, and those sorts of things will come into play as well in the future. And some of the good principles and practices that are being talked about in those industries will come back, and they'll be have a knock-on effect with the insurers in terms of how they protect themselves and what they expect their customers to have when they are insuring the property as well.
Final question to you then. What about, it is a matter of education of the established companies that they need, because they're being forced to change by technology, by the web and by broadband and by upstarts who come from an IT background. Is it a matter of education for them? Do they understand what they're getting themselves into in terms of data portability and so on, and the legal traps are going to fall into unless they're extremely careful?
I think some of them do. What we've got to remember is that all of them are in the business of risk, and how innovative they are in understanding that risk and the risk to their business and their market varies. Some are very, very traditional, and they are going to stay traditional until something really does smack them in the face, so to say. Others are very, very innovative, and they have changed and they've led the way. There are various insurers that led the way for the standards, informal standards and approaches we've got right now in cybersecurity policies and so on. Some of them have had them for years but not sold a single properly. Others got in the market recently and have sold lots of policies. So yes, they are in the business of risk. They do. Some of them do get it. They are key people there in the industry. That they are the forefront, leading all the way. And some of them are being left behind. That's true, but they will catch up at some point. Otherwise, they won't be in business much longer.
And this is very true. Very interesting stuff. It's something you don't think about a lot, I must say. Sarb Sembhi, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.